the issue rather than to the individual or the personality with which you are interacting with. And it also helps you to check your own emotion. Temperament is very important. Shouting doesn't win an argument. What wins an argument is logic and the facts, that wins the argument. And sometimes you can disagree very passionately. I can be very passionate in my discussion, but even with such passion, one should always allow your emotions to interact with your intellect.
And that's where you're coming.
That's
you do it really well. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Wisner. How is lecturing? How is being a lecturer after being, a government official, particularly heading the National Investment Commission? Now you are a part-time lecturer at the University of the African Methodist Episcopal University, but particularly the postgraduate school. How does it feel getting into the classroom?
Well, I see this as an extension of my patriotic service to the country. When I decided to enter into government in 2008, I came from the civil society where I served the country in another capacity. Then I was asked to join the government of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, first as Assistant Foreign Minister for African and Asian Affairs, and then later on, when I got back from abroad, as Executive Director of the National Investment Commission, I saw that as another way to serve my country. And now that I'm out of government since 2018, I thought that with the knowledge and experience gained, whether it is in the private sector, civil society, or with government, I needed to share with upcoming professionals. And this country has done a lot for me, educating me at one of the best institutions in the world, the Australian National University. So I thought that it was a way of giving back to the country. So I thought the classroom now would be another opportunity, since I wasn't in government, I had sufficient time to focus to help to mold the minds of the next group of professionals. And AME happens to be attractive for one. They were the first institution, or probably they are still the only institution that provides international development. And one of my graduate specialization is in development studies.
Okay.
I have a specialization in economic development policy at one of my master's program. So when they invited me, I thought I could combine that with my experience in government, especially the courses that they wanted me to lecture, international development planning, and then international trade and development. And then lately they have asked me to lecture international finance and development. So I thought I could help, And so I'm excited. Furthermore, my late father, Dr. Francis Casillo, spent all his life in the classroom, and I admire that. He taught for about 42 years.
So it wasn't a strange environment for you, getting into the classroom. It's a family thing?
I think so. Yeah, my late father, 42 years. There is no agriculturist or forester in Liberia who earned a degree between 1970 and 1990 that was not taught by my father. So he contributed a lot to the development of the country, human capital development. And so I thought to also follow in that footstep.
But why didn't you, lobby to get in government, given that you have expertise in, investment, development, and so on, given your education background? And so why didn't you lobby like others would do? After one government leaves office, they have their, everything credentials. They just want to get back in government and remain there. How much do you earn from the classroom, given what you have acquired over the years? Why not get back in government? Why didn't you see that area?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Regime comes and regime goes. The end of Madame Sirleaf regime brought in the George Weah's regime, and George Weah decided that he needed to assemble a team of professionals and others that could further his agenda and his vision, whatever it was. And probably I didn't fit that billing of what he wanted.
So it didn't require lobbying or whatsoever.
No,
But
I am a professional. I mean, yes, I'm a politician, but I also have my professional side, and my work speaks a lot in this country. What I've done, if anybody needed my service, I don't think I needed to run.
would you have obliged to work for the
I
government?
don't. It depends on what the government's agenda was.
Mhm.
It depends on the extent to which I will be free to exercise my expertise, and it will depend on a lot, including the environment. Let me say, though, that an attempt was made from the initial stage to get me on board through Vice President Joel Howard Taylor. In fact, after the one-day elections, I was in Nigeria and I gave a call to congratulate the both of them. And one of the things that came from her was, look, you are a very professional person that I've observed. I hope you are not going far away, because we will need you at least to give us 6 months or a year as we stabilize to just hold over. And I told her, well, I'm flattered. I will appreciate helping in whatever way out, if that was what she and her boss, the president, was thinking. I wouldn't have mind. Unfortunately, things did not go the way she anticipated. The president had probably different plans, and those around him had different plans. And as a professional, I have never found myself chasing anyone for a job. As I said, I'm a politician, but I'm also
A professional person.
confident in my skills and my talents. And I don't see government as the only means by which an individual can work and live. Now, the second part of your
Really?
yeah, the second
I'm hearing this from a Liberian for the first time.
I don't think so.
You don't think government is the only way to
No,
someone should live there?
No, I think first of all, government should be a place of service to the states, not a place that you want to go and get rich. And more besides that, as a professional person, yes, I've left government. Like you said, you talk about the classroom. The classroom is not going to pay me even quarter of what I was making in government. So I see my activity in the classroom as part of giving back to the states, almost pro bono, if you may. But as a professional person, I also have my firm, the Equilibrium Point Investment, and sometimes I do get periodic contracts here and there from development agencies, because there are a lot of capacity gaps in government in other areas. And so these development institutions, whether it is USAID or it is GIZ or other people, will scout for the necessary talent and skill in society. And as God will have it, God is good. I have been able to get one or two. It's not regular, but it's far between. But it gets me going. It gets me feeding my family. It gets me gassing my car and moving from day to day. So I'm a professional.
And not looking like a hungry former government official. It gets you going, at least to prevent you from looking like a hungry former government official, as people would expect, people to be after government.
That's what it should be. And for many of the young folks out there, including you, we should reach to a point. Yes, it's not sufficient to argue that the older generation, the previous governments of the past, have failed to prepare a future for you. The question is, have you failed to prepare yourself for the future? If you can rightly answer that question, it makes life a little bit easy for you. Then you find yourself not being contented with your state, your level, not being satisfied with where you are. You are behind the microphone today, which is fine. It gets you going, but that cannot be your limit. That cannot be your limit. So you get yourself going, get yourself qualifying yourself, and sooner or later you find out that you cannot be boxed in or restricted by anybody. You feel that unlike the past, government is not the only one when they take government job from you and then you just collapse everything, finish. No, you find yourself having a lot of options available before you, whether in government, outside of government, in the classroom. The least can happen. Even if I were not having consultancy, I still won't staff. I mean, the worst case scenario is that I can teach 4 or 5 universities in this country and still.
Still survive. Anyway,
Still
Mr. Wisner, honestly, I'm drowning into your voice already. I don't want this to turn into a mentorship program.
Yeah.
Let's do an interview. What is your honest appraisal of the coalition government's operation within the period of 3 years?
That is a very loaded question, but let's try to, so for the purpose of our audience out
Let's
there,
begin with the economy, which is your strength.
yeah, because normally I like to appraise government on two schools. First,
Okay, take it from there.
in order to appraise the government, you must first ask yourself, where did the government take off and where it is now? From where it took off to now, has there been any in progression
You tell us.
or regression? And on the second score is the areas. We have to combine the areas, and you already started. You want to assess the government on either the governance and school and rule of law school, on the economy, or
Let's begin with the
on
economy.
economic development.
Because the economy deals with the bread and butter issues. So let's begin with that.
On the issue of the economy, I don't think the government has done pretty well. I think there is a lot to be done. The government, in my mind, and I'm giving a very professional analysis on this one, no politics intended here. I think the government spent the first 3 years, a better part of almost 42 months, creating a lot of bottlenecks,
Such as?
for the country. Firstly, you will know that the government inherited an economy that was not the best.
But broken.
I won't use the word broken, but I was challenged. Was challenged because of several factors. Some of them were external to the previous government. One, for example, when this government came in, it was the first time that Liberia was going to be responsible for her own security. The UNMIL was going. So that created a kind of security risk for the country, for investors. The second thing was that for the first time, we're going to have a change of government. Whenever there is a change of government and a new government is coming in, there is a certain kind of political risk because you do not know what the policy of the new government coming in is. To combine all of these things, so the new government coming in will have to come in right away, hit the ground running, so that you don't create a vacuum that will exacerbate this already
Existing problems.
Existing risk that you hold. And the previous government hinted this government. Madam Salif, before she left, she had predicted, she said that this is not an ordinary situation. Being an economist herself, being a development person, she gave a hint that it is going to be a little difficult. In other words, what she was saying in essence is there is going to be rainy day as it turned over because of these uncertainties, political uncertainties. You have policy uncertainties. All of these things have an impact on the macro economy. So it was left with this government to come prepared. Unfortunately, the government came ill prepared.
How so?
You look at it by the kind of policy missteps from the very beginning.
The Propol document, isn't it a good policy?
First of all, even before that Propol came, it took almost 16 months
before the government could come with a policy.
Came up with a development policy.
Something that many pundits think that it was a pressure mounted against the government by some other people. I want to see what you're working with.
It was a pressure mounted, but even going at that, because if you want to argue, want to be fair to it, when Madam Salif took over in 2005, we did not have a development policy document right away. But what she came prepared with, first her 100-day plan, the interim poverty reduction strategy, then the poverty reduction strategy, and then when the country turned the corner from emergency to sustainable development in 2011, she came with the agenda for transformation. When this government came in, they added to the uncertainties already existing. Look at how long it took the government to even fill critical positions. In order to help the government, Madam Salif had agreed with the government that, look, I will pass an executive order to give you chance to have people hold over in critical areas of the government to allow you the opportunity to appoint so that you have a gradual transition or smooth transition.
But Mr. Western,
Unfortunately, when the government came in, people around said, look, if you let the people take over, they'll do. So the government said, everybody go on, take a leave of the position and turn over to HR.
That to many critical people, maybe it was not a good suggestion on the part of President, Ellen Johnson said it, because you just said when the government is taking over, it takes over lots of responsibilities, and politically there are some other new verses that follow a new government. So how do you are expected, George, you have to trust a former president who's already leaving? That let me leave people that are appointed, that were working at my word and pleasure.
No, it's not
to hold on.
It's not the matter. I said two things here. I said you either come prepared, or when you are ill prepared, you give yourself to come prepared. In the case of Mr. Weah, it will suggest that he did not come prepared. Look at the length of time it even took him after HR took over to fill the government. Almost 6 months.
So he didn't have the people.
So in other words, you did not have people ready there except for one or two places. What that created was an administrative vacuum. It further exacerbated the uncertainties that you have. That was just one. The second one was he did not give confidence to investors and development partners about the direction that the country was taking. Look at the first two moves that he made in the investment world, Ibomath and Eaton, both of which were bogus investment arrangement, which has come to light. The government took almost 16 months to realize that was going nowhere. Then look at the government did not give itself.
But the government has not trashed that agreement yet.
The government did. I mean, you guys in the media reported that I think it was last month or so that the legislature finally and trashed the whole thing and asked the Justice Ministry and the I think the Justice Ministry, Public Works, and another ministry to now get the go ahead to just crash it. So the government has already terminated that because of non-performance. But that was just another one. Then the government did not give herself chance with all of these uncertainties, suspicion about the government. The government went after Cabinet Janet. Again, signaling problem in the area of rule of law and creating another uncertainty, another rigmarole. The government did not only sit there. The government wrestled International Development Agency
funds.
You saw when diplomats had to write the government, which was unprecedented, to put funds back in the central bank. Then you had a situation with Leti that also dragged on
an integrated
institution that the government went and overreached their power. So there were a lot of missteps. Then you had the $16 billion issue. You had a mop-up operation that also up to now has not really been resolved. So all of these things exacerbated the situation of the government. Then the government started to undermine the institutions of government. For example, at the Civil Service Agency, the government undermined the Civil Service Agency by piling the payroll with government supporters, CDC partisans, just employing them without any economic analysis. At the end, it created a situation where the government could not even pay these individuals, and the government started to lag behind.
And don't you think that's why the government brought about the harmonization?
That led to the harmonization in order to
wasn't that a good economic strategy?
Harmonization created a new problem for the government, and that's not how you resolve it. Because in the even when you have economic difficulties, it is not the right moment to reduce spending. It's not the right time to reduce aggregate demand. If you were making $100 and the government took $50 from you, the government has reduced your purchasing power by 50%. And in the situation where on-meal was not here, the economy was having a difficult situation. If you used to buy 3 cups of rice for $75, You can no longer afford it. So what will happen now? You start to buy one cup of rice.
Mr. Wisner,
Now, if you start to-
that was meant. Okay,
if you
go
start,
ahead.
if
Go
you
ahead.
start to buy one cup of rice,
Mhm.
what that means is that the guy who used to sell 3 cups of rice can no longer sell 3 cups of rice. So his profit margin has also reduced. So not only has it affected your purchasing power, it has also affected that businessman ability to do business at the small. So what you start to have, you have this ripple effect. So before you take policy action, you have to analyze, because every policy decision that you take has a ripple effect on other areas of the economy. And I thought the harmonization policy was ill thought of, but it was something that the government was compelled to do. And why the government was compelled to do? Because the government created a mess that needed to be cleaned.
And in order to incorporate other people in it. Now that's where I was coming from. That the harmonization policy introduced by the finance minister, the government in general, is that basically there are a lot of people who want jobs, and the government is the highest employer. We need to incorporate the people. So if you are taking 100 please take 50 home. It's a theme about patriotism and nationalism.
That's not how
they were teaching the people.
That's not how you create jobs in the economy. You create jobs in the economy by expanding investment possibilities, by improving the domestic private sector to be able to absorb the people from the labor force. Because everybody cannot work in government. Everybody cannot work in government. And besides, the international governments, the international community spend hundreds of millions on public service reform. On public, you heard the right size. You remember doing Madam
Your downside.
That was meant to professionalize the public sector and to increase productivity, which is good for economic growth. But what you do, first of all, it is wrong. But students who did public administration or management will tell you that it is just wrong for you to reduce salaries. Salaries should have an upward mobility. It is inflexible downward. If a man makes 150 and you took 150 for him with his profession and everything and gave him $50, you have demotivated him. More so, if one man was supposed to take my glasses and put it here, and you employ 3 other persons to do that same job, but underpay the man who is more qualified, you demotivate that man does nothing. At the end, the 3 persons that are supposed to do it will do nothing.
Mr. Wisner,
so the government created a situation, but one could understand why the government had to bring the harmonization.
What for?
Because when the government took over, the government payroll was around $270 million, which was high when you look at the proportion of the budget by any standard. But after the government, without economic analysis or where the revenue will come from, started to pad up the payroll, it went up to almost $310 million per year. Government could not afford that.
That is more than the national budget.
Yeah, when the government entered the IMF program, IMF said, look, you have to bring the budget back to where you made it in 2018. This was one of the reasons behind the harmonization program. But even the harmonization program created a new problem for the economy.
You've touched part of the rule of law, the economy, governance, as well. But let's look at the issue of let's go to your expert area, investment. You mentioned Iboma, excluding Iboma and Eton. Maybe some investment or concession came into this country unbeknownst to some of us in the media. What can you say about government's ability in attracting businesses, new businesses, investment or concession so much, so far coming into the country since it took over?
Except for the latest CBL report, I have looked at all CBL reports since the government came in, and all of the CBL reports pointed in one direction, that there have been a drop in foreign direct investment flow.
What for?
Into the country. A lot of factors, including some of the things that I told you about. Money does not like noise, and money loves security. If there is a perception issue and a reputational damage that the government created by some of the things that it did, bordering on governance and the rule of law, it will scare away investors at most, or it will create a situation of wait and see. you will find the only investment that will flow into the country are high risk investment, which in most cases will not be beneficial to the country. And
What are
of,
high risk
and
investments?
most of it will be it will be, it's almost, let me give you a situation.
Mhm.
It's like you have a house that you are renting, right?
Mhm.
At the time, the house is worth $500, but nobody want to buy that house at that time because of the situation. So you say, look, I got a house. If you have $300, I can give you the house. Even though I, Wisner, have no need for the house,
Mhm.
have no intention to live in a house at that particular point in time, but I see an opportunity available over there. The house is cheap.
Mhm.
So what I take the risks, I go and acquire the house for 300. But I acquire the house and sit on the house. I don't go to live in the house. The house is there. So in essence, it is not working. Now, what this government, I think that has happened in the investment setting since 2018 is that the government has been struggling to maintain investments that are already in the country.
Struggling?
Yeah, I mean, struggling. You've been hearing the situation of Sami Dabe that have sold out now.
Yeah.
A new company has taken over. You heard the Firestone is still struggling. The situation right now with even the only iron ore mining company in operation now is the ArcelorMittal. Even though this government, fortunately for them, which the last government did not have, because every time you hear the government cry, oh, the last government had more money than this government. When the last government left, the price of iron ore was just recovering under Madam Salif for a good part of Madam Salif administration after the global price slump in 2010, 2011. Iron ore price, which was under $100, started to improve a little. But when this government took over, iron ore price was around $100 to $110 for per dry metric ton. But now, under the WIA regime for the last 2 years, year on, iron ore price has shot up almost $225.
So it's an opportunity for this government.
225 to 200. So in other words, more revenue is flowing into the country from iron ore sale.
To ArcelorMittal.
The only difference is this government has not been able to create the policy environment to allow ArcelorMittal to increase their production of ore so as to expand the flow of revenue. But this government,
I don't get it when you talk about government creating policy environment to ensure that ArcelorMittal can increase its
ArcelorMittal and other construction companies. Well, what I'm saying is this: while the price of iron ore has increased, more than double the time Madam Sadi left off. So you would think if at all Madam Salif was getting $100 for every one dry metric ton of iron ore unit, George Weah government, President Weah government is getting $225 from the same dry metric ton. So you would think that it is an advantage, right? It should be an advantage. So if the output, if Madam Salif time, if the output of iron ore, if we were selling about 50,000 metric tons of iron ore a year, at $100, if we are government was selling the same 500,000 metric tons at $225 right now, you will see the difference in the revenue flow.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is not happening. While the price is up, ArcelorMittal is making a lot of money now, and there's a windfall. But the production level have not substantially increased. The same with gold production. Our gold price is up, but even though gold price is up, we could have benefited more. Also, there are other complementary policies that can be put in place to be able to benefit from now this uptick. And I can tell you, in the foreseeable future, for the next 4 or 5 years, for some of us who are in the development field, we can predict that the price of iron ore is going to continue to climb. The price of gold is going to continue to climb.
And nations that have these resources should benefit more.
The price of natural resources will climb. And Liberia's economy is still largely extractive driven. And you know the reason why the prices will continue to climb? Because after the corona, which had badly affected the global economy,
Yeah.
now that the world seems to be having a handle on corona because of the vaccines and other things that have been to do, there is now prospect for global economic recovery.
Yeah.
As they recover, the demand for primary commodities from third world countries like Liberia that trade in this commodity will be high. For example, the United States of America, if you follow the news, just over the weekend on Sunday, the Senate had just passed a procedural vote for a budget of 1 trillion in infrastructure development in America.
Mhm.
That may follow by a 3 trillion budget. That is just one aspect. Europe is also recovering. Great Britain had broken off from the European Union, Brexit, and is now restructuring her economy. So the demand for primary commodity will be high, even though China is not growing as fast as China was growing before. But the Chinese economy is export driven, so China relies merely on production and selling to the rest of the world. It's the world's factory.
Let's come back home.
So the demand
Mhm.
for iron ore, for gold, for rubber, for some of our primary commodities will be high. In other words, if the government learn to plan and get all of the experts aligned, get the professionals, get the right expertise in government and start to plan, the country could benefit. Unfortunately, that is not happening. That is not happening.
Mm.
So on that score, I don't think the government has done extremely well.
Let's look at national image building, or rebranding, as many people now. This thing about other nations like China. One of the smart moves that nations are making around the world, knowledge-based nations are taking a smart move in ensuring that they rebrand the image of their countries through so many ways, in culture, even in policy and all of that. Do you think Liberia's image, both home and international, is good?
Liberia image has been dealt a serious blow
Since this government came to office?
Yes, it took us a long time. Before 2005, Liberia was seen as a pariah state, as an exporter of war, and every other thing you can think about. It took us a long time, even for our passport to be valued.
Mhm.
When Madame Salif came, you saw the kind of team that she assembled, the Anthony Sayers of this world.
Mhm.
They took Gawe McIntosh, Ambassador Boo, Olobanki King Akirele. All of these things were intended to give a perception that Liberia was back. Those were professionals, highly connected in international circles.
What's the point?
The point is that a lot was done to repair Liberia's battered image, both locally and internationally. Since this government came in, initially, like I said, the first 3 months of the first 3 years of the government, there was a serious reputational damage. I cited a situation with Cabinet Janet, an unorthodox way of going after a justice of the Supreme Court for apparently nothing, for exercising his function in the course of his duty. You saw the situation with Leti, the situation with what happened undermining the Civil Service Agency, the situation with overreach with the central bank, where the 6 major world powers had to write the government, effectively telling the government, put back
Our money.
that you took. Those were all reputational damage. You saw how long it took when the president came in the first 3 months. No one is, I'm not accusing you on the show of whether he got it legally or illegally, but the perception created. 3 months he came, he started to tear down his building on 9th Street and other places and building other
New
buildings.
structures, the condominiums.
His officials around him follow the theme. You saw how long it took him to even file his asset declaration, almost 6 months into his regime. And even at that, he had to evoke confidentiality that it cannot even be. All of these things create suspicion, whether rightly or wrongly. The perception is there, and perception weighs heavily and impacts on how people interact with the government also. So I think there has been a lot of reputational damage. You saw the situation with the passport scandal at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was not good for us. That was not good. Then the series of killings on unexplained murders. Many of them, people who were working with integrity institutions, either involved in audit or so. They disappeared. Up to now, there has not been a comprehensive finality brought to such. The $16 billion issue, the 25 million mop-up operation, all of these things created reputational damage.
I ask this question particularly, Mr. Wisner, because it's not so much about, you know, just hearing about just the damage caused here. How has the action, I mean, the actions that we've taken, how have our actions affected us internationally with our partners? You know, that yes, our partners here wrote us and said, put our monies back. Could that be those actions you're talking about? Could those be some reasons why we're not getting the investment into the country? That people are not, you know, finding Liberia suitable for business? Could those be some of the reasons why, you know, unemployment is high in the country?
Yeah, because it creates. If you have money, you want to. I mean, these people are not coming with $100 to invest. Some of them have 100 million or more. No, if you're a businessman, will you want to go into an environment of uncertainty where you're not even too sure about the rule of law? That's the perception weighs heavily. Governance is critical. The governance environment, the adherence perception of the adherence to the rule of law, it's very important for investment. Let me give you another governance issue.
Mhm.
Not that Liberia did not have the perception of corruption, like the last government.
I nearly brought that up.
The last government was accused
because you serve as the head of the National Investments Commission and the
I serve
government
as executive director.
executive director. Sorry, yeah. Then the government signed about 68 concessions, and according to the information, 2 met international standards. I'm just thinking here right now, what advice did Mr. Wisner give the previous administration regarding concession or investments?
Okay, I will answer your question first by making a clarification first. I went to the National Investment Commission in 2014. Most of the investments that you're talking about, concessions, were signed between 2008 and 2011. Now, having said that, I'm not saying this to say that they were bad investment, but just to clarify that.
Mhm.
And the investments
That you came in when all these things were already signed. Okay.
Of course, there were some investment that are, but at that time we had already had the I think there was the most Stevenson audit report or so.
Mo Ibrahim.
Was it Mo Ibrahim? But that audit report that you are quoting, it saddens me that, you know, I've associated with the media before, that not one media institution in this country or journalists have taken upon themselves the opportunity of researching, reading the audit report, and saying, what does it really say? Did it say that the concessions were bogus? Did not mean because they were bogus, illegal? Did they point out specific issues with international best practices that Liberia didn't meet? What is it? Because I usually hear people, 66 bogus concession, but not a single journalist. And every time that I get on the station, I ask every journalist when they ask me that question.
Oh, I'm guilty.
I try to.
I'm
I say,
guilty.
if you want us to discuss that, then you should be willing to quote it and let us discuss that report. But I don't believe that is something. Research is a problem at least
not a problem with every journalist in this country, because we did not research 1 or 2 issues. That's not we not research.
No, not only. I know you guys are trying, with limited resources.
I like that.
But let's pull it. I mean, we have to be critical. I associated with the media before. I was with ERCM before, so it's good. Self-criticism is good.
Yeah.
And by and large, 70% of the media, we don't take time to research on critical issues.
So Ellen did not sign Booker's concession agreement?
They did not sign Booker's concession agreement. What the audit report said, and that audit was commissioned by Ellen herself. By Ellen herself. It was not someone saying it. She asked international auditors as part of the requirement of the IMF, because we're under this debt relief program, to audit these concession agreements. And the purpose of audit is not to catch rogues, but to see what are the systemic failures, what are the weaknesses or so. And the report pointed out that many of these concession agreements, except for 2, did not all meet international best practices. Was it true? Yes. And the reason was Liberia's unique circumstances. Liberia was coming out of a war situation where almost everything was zero. The economy was at a standstill. Liberia needed to attract investment. Liberia was not at the best place. But mind you, Liberia was competing for international capital like other countries that were far ahead. Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria. So in some respect, Liberia had to put forth, had to
ignore its own laws.
had to no, not Liberia did not ignore her laws.
Bent international
Liberia did not ignore her laws. Some of the international practices that they are talking about. Let's take, for example, in the area of agriculture, Sami Darby and other situation. The temporary practice in granting concession that has to do with land, large-scale land investment, is to have free and prior consent. That is where the concession is. The people in the area must have a say in the land also. Liberia had not reformed her land laws. So you will find out that when Liberia awarded these concessions, and many of them were done without the free and prior consent. And then afterward, when the Mo Ibrahim, when the audit report and other international partners started to beat the government, and we came in with the land reform, you saw a lot of noise around the concession companies, In some other areas where Liberia would have benefited with stronger negotiation and deals, Liberia bent over backwards and gave incentives that were not necessary. Sometimes
incentives to whom?
To concessions.
To concessionaires?
Tax waivers. For example, if someone came to do investment in iron ore, the main niche, the main area of business is just to extract the iron ore, right? But to extract that iron ore, you must have certain infrastructure in place. For example, the man needs a lot of electricity. I gave one example with our China Union, because when I came on board, I reviewed the concession. I saw that within the concession, China Union, for example, needed 75 megawatts of electricity to be able to beneficiate the iron ore. Extract it and get it to do for shipment. The state, Liberia,
could not provide that.
Liberia Electricity Company could not even provide 5% of that. So in the concession to do, you have to consider all of these ramifications. And sometimes you have to ignore, this is not an excuse. They got some really bad concessions, like the APM terminal and other concessions.
I knew you would have touched that, Mr. Wisner.
But what people refer to as bogus are not bogus concessions. They are concessions that Liberia did not get the maximum benefit that Liberia otherwise would have gotten, and did not meet international best practice. But of course, the conditions at the time were not right. And sometimes Liberia had to balance between expediency and legality, what Liberia wanted to go.
That's
and,
right.
And what was at that time crucial for the country, for a government that inherited 85 million as a national budget, a government that had a payroll where people had not been paid for 36 months, where the government, where almost everything is zero electricity grid, no road network.
So you, in other words, say, let's usher these things.
In other words, the government, to some extent, bent over backwards. But those same concessions in today, where minimum standards have been restored, looking back at that, you will say, how did we sign this or sign that? And if you are not careful and if you do not do an in-depth analysis, you tend to, like the layman on the street, to say, oh, those are bogus
concession.
Because you have not understood the circumstances.
Mr. Wisner, there's never enough time having a conversation with Mr. George Judy Wisner II. I've listened to him on many platforms, and unfortunately, right now, I have only 4 minutes to go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 4 minutes. Time flies, of course, most especially when you are lecturing instead of serious, combative, intellectual engagement. But this is a very good one. At least introducing you to Nothing to Hide. You certainly come back here some other time for at least an hour to talk more. And I want to now start now with my followers who request most of the time for an addition of this show time, at least for 1 hour, 30 minutes. Mr. Wisner, it's always a pleasure having you, and it's our first time having an interaction with you, but we wish to have you some other time. Let's wrap up quickly. At least in 1 hour, in 1 minute, 30 seconds. What do you think the position of the CDC right now in terms of re-election or exit? That's a big question. I know, really.
That's a political question.
You need more time, but yeah, please use 1 minute 30 seconds. At least you can close up with that.
My man, you don't expect me from the opposition for Unity Party to come here and tell you CDC. They need to look at the exit door and get out. They promise so much, and they have not even.
Really? Did the CDC promise anything?
I mean, when they promised for 12 years, they were beating the UP government. You have not done this. You have not done that. The CDC.
In other words, that's a promise that when we come, we'll do more.
Yeah, that's a promise that will better the life of people. They have not moved the needle even 1 inch. All they have been doing this year, even where the promise is, because I heard the central bank and other people trying to boast that, oh, we have dropped inflation now from 31% to 9%. But that is not a sustainable situation. That is not. Sorry, you don't have time. As I would have explained for the public out there. That is not. So the
CDC should see the exit door instead of
CDC knows that they should seek the exit door, and they will exit in 2020.
But who are the people prepared to replace the CDC?
You sure you want us to go?
You
sure you want us to go in there in 4 minutes?
It's not possible. But Mr. Wisner, thank you so much for coming in, and we so much appreciate you for honoring our invitation. We hope that you come back some other time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Quickly, 45 seconds. Let's close up with you.
I think Liberia is at a crossroads. We spent almost 4 years of not taking any major step forward. It seemed as though we had taken 2 steps backwards. We think that the government still has 2 more years. The government can get its act together and start to govern and start to get the country going. Right now, the situation is there. Liberians are suffering. The economy is bad. People can hardly afford 3 square meals a day. It is now where the country wants to find itself. So we all need to buckle up and take the country forward.
Thank you so much. And let me extend this sincere apology to all of your viewers and listeners who really always wait to participate in the program, but this afternoon you didn't have the chance to do so. We didn't have the time in our favor as well, and we needed to do justice to our guest to learn his thoughts on so many things. In fact, our talking points were not entirely exhausted. Well, thank you so much, Mr. George Wisner, Judy Wisner, the second coming this afternoon on the program, and our motivational message again from former President Barack Obama: in the face of impossible odds, people who love their country can change it. My name is Matthias Labindi.
The resolution calls for creating free pre-kindergarten for 3- and 4-year-olds and 2 years of free community